In this lecture, we're going to update the counter demo that we did in this chapter before and make it use enums to control whether the counter is going up or down. We're going to go to Qt Creator and do that. Okay, here we are in Qt Creator. We're first going to open that project. I am going to go where it is stored on my drive right now. The project is stored in here. I am going to open it in Qt Creator because I am going to copy files from it. But I just want to run it before so that you see it. The project looked like this when we finished it. You could start the counter, you could stop it, you could make it count upwards, or you can make it count downwards like this. If you look at the code that controlled this, if you go in counter, we are using a bool value to control whether this is going up or down. And we are setting that up in QML by setting the app value to true or false. We want to use enums to achieve the same thing. We're going to close this right now. Let's close all. Create a new project. It's a Qt Quick application as usual. We're going to call it counter demo enum version. We store it in the usual location. Choose our Qt version. Choose the desktop kit as usual and finish. We're going to copy some files over from the previous project because we don't want to redo all this. I'm going to click on the main CPP file of the project and show in Explorer. It is going to open where these are stored on my drive. I want to copy the counter class. I also want to copy the main CPP file and the main QML file. I'm going to copy those, close this, and close the project now because I don't need it anymore. I am going to go where my project, the new one, is stored. And I am going to paste in the files. It's going to say main QML and main CPP are already there. I'm going to override them, close this, and Qt Creator is saying that something has changed. It's asking me to reload everything. I want to reload everything. And you see the new QML file is available here. And if you go in main, you see that we are exposing our counter value as we did in the previous demo we did. We want to add the existing files we just added for counter class. We do that like this, select counter and add the files. They're going to be available right now. You see counter CPP is here, counter.h is here. We want to add another class that is going to store our enum. So add new C++ class. We call this counting, because it's going to control whether we count upwards or downwards. We're going to inherit QObject, and we want to go to the header file. You can modify this to use QGadget because we're not really going to be using these signals and slots, but I am going to leave it like this. You can change it if you want, now that you know how you can do that if you need it. We're going to define our enum. The enum is going to be controlling whether we count upwards or downwards. And we need to decorate our enum with the QEnum macro as we did before. Just like this, we have our class ready, but we don't want people to be able to instantiate this class because it really is not meant to be instantiated. We are going to take the constructor here and make it private. This is going to prevent people to be able to instantiate this class. We're going to say private and make it private like this. Let's take out these spaces and our class is ready. Now we need to go to counter, include the class because it's going to be used in here. We want to comment out the line we had for up. We want to say QProperty and say counting, count direction. Let's call this counting. Let's take out this pane here so that we see the entire thing. We have our property, we have the getter, we have the setter, and we have the signal to notify if something changes. We need to generate all the methods that are needed for this property to work. We're going to right click on the QProperty macro there and select to generate the missing methods. We have our getter here, we have our setter here, and we must have our signal here, counting changed. We want to move the implementation of these methods in the CPP file. Let's refactor. Set counting is in CPP now. We want counting to move to CPP as well. And we want to take set counting and move it to the public section of the class. Let's take out this. This is what we want now. We can actually take this and move it along with the other methods. And this reminds me that we don't need these methods anymore, up and set up, because this property is commented out. We don't use it now. We can comment these methods. I don't want to remove them because you might need to look at them. I'm going to go to CPP and comment them out also. Set up is going to be commented out, and up should be commented out. This is what we want. Let's check the class to see that everything is all right. This is almost all we need for this to work, but we need to go back to the CPP file and take out the initialization of the app value that we had here. We want to use mCounting, and we want this to be counting, count direction, and make it count down by default. Now let's bring up this pane again, go into main CPP. We need to include counting, and we need to register the counting class as an uncreatable type. We can say QML register uncreatable type. It's going to be counting, and it is going to be in the same module as the counter, just to make things easier and to show you that you can do this actually. com/coon counter. It's going to be 1 for the major version, 0 for the minor version. The name in QML is going to be counting, and we need to put a message that is going to be shown when somebody tries to instantiate this type in QML. We are going to say the same thing we always say: cannot instantiate counting from QML. It's not allowed. The last piece of the puzzle is go to QML. The counter module is already imported, so we don't need to change anything about that. But we need to go down to the up and down button and update how we set the C++ class to count up or down. We're going to say mCounter, counting, and we're going to say counting up. And you see that our enum is now available here to be used by us. Down below, we're going to make it count down. And this reminds me of something we might have forgotten to change on the C++ side. It is the control of going up or down in the constructor of our counter. You notice here that mApp is no longer available, so we need to say mCounting here and check to see if it is equal to counting upwards. So we're going to say counting, count direction up. If it is going up, we increment the count. If it is going downwards, we decrement the count here. This is really all we need. Let's try and build this to see that it actually works. Looks like we have a warning here, warning of the initialization order of these things here. Let's go back in the header file and see the order we have. So it is mCount timer counting. We should move the timer in the middle. I like to have the same order because it makes things easier for the compiler, and I don't have these warnings. I hate to have warnings, and I try to get rid of them if I can. Let's rebuild. Let's run and see that we are actually able to control the direction of our count. It's going to go downwards by default because if you see here in the counter, we are initializing to go down by default. This is why we are going down. We can actually configure it to go up, and you see that it is going up minus 17, 16, 15. It's going to go up to 0, and then it's going to start 1, 2, 3, and things like that. You can bring it down again, bring it up. You can stop it, start it again. And it looks like we are doing fine in our refactoring to use enums to control the direction of the counter. We can actually come up in the CPP file and remove all these methods that we had uncommented before. We don't need them anymore. We go in the header file, take these out, and we should be all set. This is all for this lecture. I hope it shows you how you can practically use enums you defined in C++ to control the behavior of your application in QML like we are doing here. We should actually take this out too because we don't need it anymore. And one other thing we can try out before we close this lecture. Let me show you what happens when we try to instantiate something in QML that we exposed to be uncreatable. Let's try and create a counting object in QML. We can come here and say counting. It doesn't need to have anything inside. Let's build. We are going to build fine. The build is successful, but I want you to look at the application output. When we try to run the application, it's going to say cannot instantiate counting from QML, not allowed. This is the error that we specified in here. And this way, the QML engine is going to help you and stop you from making stupid mistakes by trying to build something that you are not allowed to build. This is all for this lecture. In the next one, we're going to see how you can work with object lists and object properties. I'll see you in the next lecture.